So I've started putting these rocker covers on, just started with the one and torqued it all down. So the owner's manual does say 8 Newton meters, so I've torqued these to 8 and then gone a little bit past, because I've heard some people saying that the bolts actually undo themselves. So I've gone a little bit past that, just to the point where you can feel it's really pushing that rubber down, but haven't gone too much past that. And just going to chuck the other one on now. Going to leave these to set overnight before we drop the engine in and run it. Just to make sure the sealant all sets. You should always leave it for as long as you possibly can, just to make sure you don't have any premature oil leaks. As you can probably tell, this is the same colour as the engine bay, so both in metallic purple, and they're both going to be matching, and I reckon they're going to look really nice together, so that's the reason I've gone with this colour. It looked really good to the eyes, nice and shiny in person, and it doesn't need the use of clear coat, and quite cheap for what it is. So I've just run a small bead of oil resistant silicone along where the rocker cover gasket will be sitting, and I've just smudged it all in with my finger. The main areas you want to focus on are in the main creases at the front there, so right in there is a main spot you want to focus on, because it does leak a bit through there, and then around your half moon as well, so you want to go underneath your half moon and then on top of the half moon, and then same deal, just focus on the two edges, and they're just the most common places where they will leak from. So get the sealant on and it will seal quite quickly, so make sure you get your covers on quite quick and slowly go with the bolts, torquing them down. So you just want to start at the middle, go side to side, and then move your way out from there. So just go like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and just keep following that kind of pattern on the way out, just to evenly distribute the torque as you tighten it down, just to prevent anything from causing damage. So I've got both the rocker covers on, all sealed up, and I have replaced the thermostat and all resealed that. We let that sit overnight just so that can all seat properly, and put the coil pack cover back on, which we painted a matte black. So we've got these 3 parts down here, which we've all just painted. So that's going to be the front timing cover, the little clip that holds in the wiring for the adjustable cam gear, and that's just the little cover that holds in the loom. So at the moment we're going through and figuring out what goes where with the loom, just matching up with the other side. It has pinched a few wires which we will have to repair, and we're just kind of going through and matching up the loom with the one in the good car that we know was working. So matching all that up, putting the fuse box back in, as we had to pull all that out to open everything up so it could all be welded back on with the red supports. So that's all been opened up and closed up again. Hopefully got all that back in the right place, and it's just fixing up wiring, making that all fit nicely, retaining all the factory clamps and everything. So a little bit to go. It's just going to be a slow kind of process, because we don't want to rush the wiring and then get stuck halfway through because one plug hasn't worked. So we'll keep going at it and see how we go. So everything in terms of the front subframe has now been swapped. So the last little bit I had to swap over was the brake hoses. So the turbo brakes actually use a different setup of brake hose, which I didn't notice earlier, but noticed before. I've swapped those over now. Everything's all tightened up and the front end is all ready. And I've reassembled the front end out of our GT. So now that's all ready to go. So I'm going to pop that back in now. So Connor's going to pull the rear subframe out of this car so we can swap it over. Already got the other one out. While he's doing that, I'm just going to work on pulling the main engine loom out, so that connects to the ECU down in the passenger footwell. So I'll be dragging all that through just to get rid of this old wiring, because it has all been chopped up. So we're going to pull all this out and then do the same on this car, pull all the wiring out and then just swap the two over, since this does have an ECU. So we'll get all that sorted.
Alright, so here's the rear subframe out of the turbo model. As you can see, it's got the bigger brakes on it, the 5x1 shafts and diff, and it's got a 4 to 4.3 ratio diff. This should bolt straight in. It was pretty easy taking it out, as you may have seen in the earlier clip. Yeah, basically all we need to do, bolt the subframe up to the car. You've got the handbrake cables there, Got the brake lines already attached, just need to go to the hard lines on the chassis, and that should be it. Bolt the drive shaft in.
So I've put the front timing cover back on with the adjustable time gear, cleaned that all up and just painted the front cover the same as that coil pack cover there, just so it all looks nice and uniform from the front. I put our new hard race engine mounts on, which are stiffened engine mounts. Going to be a lot more rigid over the factory mounts, but it's going to be a lot nicer and they should last quite a while as well. It's just going to give it a nice feel when we're on the track. So therein, I've just tidied up the intake manifold surface. So I've just used some brake parts cleaner and just a rag and just gone through and cleaned up that surface just so it's nice and shiny and there's no leftover residue, just so the gasket will stick and we won't have any intake leaks. Got a few little bits and pieces, a few brackets and stuff to go back onto the front there, and then we've got a new set of belts that we can put on, so we're putting those on, and we're just going to put this intake manifold back on, give that a bit of a clean up, chuck the fan on the front, get that all tied into the water pump, and then should be pretty much ready to drop the engine in. So I've just pulled out these two shocks on the left. They're Bilstein lowered suspension, and you can see they're an eyelet type, so that was on our standard GT suspension. They used an eyelet type shock, and then our GTT suspension uses a fork type strut. So we're going to be swapping those over. Like you can see, these are out of a 34 GTR, they're just the shocks, and they've also got lowered king springs, so we'll be putting those back in.
And love is all we'll ever trust. Yeah, no, I don't want to waste what's left. And on we'll go, through the wastelands, through the highways, till my shadow turns to sun rays. And on we'll go, through the wastelands, through the highways.
So I've got the intake manifold on, and we've gone ahead and cleaned out the throttle body as well. That was quite dirty, so I just used some throttle body cleaner on that, cleaned it all out, and the motor's pretty well back together. We've got a couple of brackets we're cleaning up at the moment, and we'll be popping those back on. We'll get the power steering pump in, AC compressor in, and then we'll be able to put the belts on. So we've swapped the turbo subframe into our car now, so it's got the rear wheel steering, the bigger brakes, and has the diff. So this just swapped over as one big package. Handbrake cables are all done up, struts are all in, everything's all tightened up, so the back end of this is ready to go. So that's all the suspension swapped over. Now we're going to get into pulling the loom out and swapping the loom between the two. So we've pulled all the remaining pieces that we need out of the other shell, so that's the whole engine loom there. We just pulled that through the firewall along with the ECU. We've taken out the AC condenser with the AC compressor and the receiver dryer, so we've taken all those parts out and they're all ready to be swapped over. So the next thing we're going to do is pull the loom out on this, which is the older loom, and we're going to put our better loom back in, and then we should be able to drop the engine straight in, plug it all in, and if everything goes to plan, then it should start.
Through the wastelands, through the highways, and on we'll go. And we'll grow in number, fueled by them to see the horizon, turn us to thousands. And we'll grow in number, fueled by them to see the horizon, turn us to thousands. And on we'll go, through the wastelands, through the highways, till my shadow turns to sun rays. And on we'll go, through the wastelands, through the highways, and on we'll
What's going on here, mate?
There was some still, they had lubricant left in it with a R34 dye left in it as well, so it's obviously spilled on the floor, which is not good. We thought it was fully emptied.
Apparently not.
Apparently the bloke lied to us.
Unlucky.
So, yeah.
Maybe the condenser still works then.
Well, yeah, if it was holding
It'd be all that, yeah.
I don't know if it was holding gas or not, because we just connected the lines and nothing happened, so...
Who knows, we'll have to suss it.
Yeah. Have to do a vac test on it, leave it for 30 minutes and see if it holds a vacuum. Right, so we're about ready to put the engine in. We've got the power steering pump set there. Fuse box has all been reassembled. Have to put the ABS unit and brake master cylinder in. Battery tray. The power steering pump has been taken off, as you probably saw in the time lapse. That's all on the motor already. It's got all new belts on it. New AC compressor belt, new power steering belt, new alternator belt. Engine is almost ready to go in. It's got the new engine mounts as Tom put in. It's got new studs for the exhaust. We've got a new exhaust gasket to go on it. New engine mount on that side. So basically, we're at the point of getting ready to put this on a chain and drop it in the big hole that's right there. Alright, so clutch is on. Rear gearbox plate is on as well for the starter motor and to mount the gearbox, keep dust out. Clutch fan's on. Almost everything is ready to go into the car. Now you may have seen us disconnect the power steering pump and the AC. That's just for ease of use when it's in the car. It's going to make it a little bit easier. Just as we got so much room, so it's a no-brainer to put the brackets on while we can. Get them all tight. So hopefully in the next time lapse you're going to see us put this engine in that hole.
I see the world through ice covered in ink and bleach. Cross out the ones who heard my cries and watched me weep. I love everything. Fire spreading all around my room. My world's so bright, it's hard to breathe, but that's alright. Hush. Take my eyes open to force reality. Why can't you just let me eat my weight in glee? I live inside my own world of make-believe.
Alright guys, so just a quick update. The engine is in. Mounts aren't fully bolted in yet. Sorry about the light. We're just putting the gearbox in now. We've got the single piece drive shaft in here going up to the new diff. Nice hole for the selector to go through. Obviously you can see it's at quite an angle right now, but that's what we need to be able to get the top bell housing bolts in. It's about 1 o'clock in the morning, so I think this is where we're going to leave it. I think we've made pretty good progress this weekend. We've swapped both subframes, front and rear. brakes, ABS module, fuse box, gearbox, engine, power steering pump, AC system, almost everything in a car. So just a few things we gotta connect up, double check before we drive the car. So if all goes to plan, this thing should be on the road soon. Alright, so we're finishing the night off with the gearbox in, drive shaft in, all the suspension's tight, engine mounts are tight now, the brake lines are tight, everything that we have touched is now, what do you reckon, pretty much ready to go, isn't it? So hopefully this thing will be able to drive to paint tomorrow. Well, today actually.
Yeah, just kicking up daisies. Got 1 too many quarters in my pockets. Counting like the 4-leaf clovers in my locket. Untied laces, yeah. Just tripping on daydreams. Got dirty little lullabies playing on repeat. Might as well just ride around the nursery and count sheep.